I'm Chad Harvey, and this is AI for the C-Suite, the show for senior leaders who know AI matters and need to figure out what to do about it. Each episode, we dig into what it all actually means for middle market organizations, how it's changing decisions, strategy, leadership, and the nature of work. Let's get into it. My guest today has spent more than 2 decades shaping how some of the world's most recognizable brands and leaders show up in public. She ran global communications for Apple's creative agency and for 72 and Sunny before founding the Good Advice Company, where she now helps C-suite leaders build personal brands that actually sound like them. Elizabeth Rosenberg has a take you need to hear. In an age where AI can optimize your LinkedIn, write your bio, and even mimic your voice, the leaders who win aren't the ones who post the most. They're the ones who stay unmistakably human. She's equal parts strategist and straight talker with a healthy skepticism about handing your story over to a machine. We're going to get into what a personal brand even means now, how to use AI without disappearing into it, and why the most human thing you do might be your biggest competitive advantage. Elizabeth Rosenberg, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Thank you so much for having me. I think that was one of my favorite intros ever.
Oh,
thank you.
Boy. I love it when people tell me good things. All right. We're going to have some fun today. And let's start with some foundational stuff. It's 2026. What actually makes up a personal brand these days for an exec? And what's genuinely changed now that AI is in the mix versus just noise, right? Because there's a lot of that out there.
I think we all need to take into consideration that we all have a personal brand, whether you've made a conscious effort to build it or not. So what your personal brand is what and how people are talking about you when you're not in the room. That's what I like to think of it as. What's happening now is people are going to AI to help build their brands. And AI is just so agreeable and also wants us to, I don't really think stand out authentically, but really kind of show up how society wants us to show up. So what I'm finding is that AI is building brands where everyone sounds like each other. And the thing that is really obvious, I think the results of this are what AI looks like on LinkedIn right now, right? It's there's so many posts that sound the same, that have that pregnant pause, that are this is the lesson that I learned. And then you're also seeing a lot of people that are now posting, get rid of the AI slop. Everyone's sounding the same. I don't like it here anymore. So we're definitely at a crossroads of what that looks like. And I think what the future of everyone's brand is going to look like.
So let me dig in on something that you just surfaced there, because one of the things that I find when I work with execs, and I don't work with them on personal brand, but I do oftentimes get a lot of questions from folks about their voice and how to avoid this homogenization factor that you're talking about. One of the things I find quite frequently is they just expect the AI, whatever the system is, to understand who they are and to channel their voice without any other homework. And I feel like when we're talking about personal brand or we're talking about tone or voice, a lot of it just comes down to doing your homework and giving context to a lot of these systems if you're going to turn over some of the writing and some of the voice to them. So I'm interested in your perspective. How much of it is giving context and seeding that in the AI so that it can channel and better understand who the individual is versus, whoa, we just need to put up a wall here and really lean into the human side?
I think there's a little bit of both, because I've practiced both too.
Yeah.
I have a Google Doc that has every one of my LinkedIn posts since 2019 on it. The drafts that I have, and obviously in 2019 and 2020, AI was not writing my post for me, right? It still isn't, to be fair. My LinkedIn, when you go to it, says all comments and all posts are written by me. And it's very important for me that people understand that. But even if I upload all of that into a Claude and all of that into a ChatGPT and say, can you write a post about blank, blank, blank? It's for LinkedIn. I wanted to include this. These are lessons I've learned. It is still never going to give me 100% of what my voice is, right? Because your voice evolves, your voice changes, your voice is contextual. You have intellectual knowledge of what's going on at any moment and any time. And the thing about LinkedIn is that it is thought leadership that is happening in the moment. So we do have to be very aware of how we are talking about things that's also connecting with culture, right? Or connecting with something that is happening in real time. So I actually think it's less about training AI for your voice and more about prompting AI and having kind of, I think, systems and your settings in place that say what not to do. So don't change my voice for this. I want you to push back. And is this going to be AI optimized? Is this something that is going to resonate with my audience? Is this like, can you give me grammatical information as to like how this could better be, I think, written in a way that is going to be read best versus changing all of my words? Like mine literally says like, do not change the tone nor the idea of the post, but grammatically, is there anything in here that's not making sense? Or is this optimized for what will work best for the platform, whether that's Substack, whether that's Medium, whether that's LinkedIn or anything, right? But a lot of the time it will still override that. It's wild. I'll go back and I'm like, I did not ask you to rewrite my post. I don't want you to. Just, I need you to tell me, I want you to tell me exactly what I asked for. And then it's always like, my bad. Like, you're right. You didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
So I do think as we are using AI as a writing partner, I think we need to be very clear of where our human voice is going to stand out. And I'm just noticing too, the personal brands that are thriving right now are the ones that have the more human perspective and the more human writing and say things that AI wouldn't say,
Wait, and you surfaced something else, I think that's really important. You talked about the evolution of a brand and the evolution of a voice. And one of the things I wonder is whether we're going to start to see voices stagnate, not just be homogenized, but stagnate and not evolve because of an over-reliance on the tech.
A gazillion %. Yes. Because I think what we're seeing is that people are really starting to question their own trust in themselves and their writing.
Yeah.
Like, Chat and Claude said that this wasn't right. Gemini is pushing back and says it's not right. I know that this is right. I have 25 years of experience doing this, but am I not doing this right? You know what I mean? Like, and I think this is where we need to actually, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but this is where we need to start really listening to our own gut and our own intuition as to what feels right and what doesn't. And I have found that kind of the more unhinged I am and the more honest and the more authentic and the more I'm like, I'm just going to say what everyone's thinking and nobody else is actually posting, those are the posts that always get the most traction. I know that I have a privilege of being able to do that because I own my own company, right? So as a PR person, I'm also like, I don't want an employee off doing that.
Yeah, right.
Like, please be careful. But I do think that the unabashed and that like kind of like outlandish and unhinged voice is the one that's actually going to stand out right now.
I completely agree with that. And I'll be interested in, I wasn't thinking about this question, so totally going off script already. But one of the things that I've started to do when I write an article now is I will actually feed it back into AI and I will ask it to do some deep research. Sometimes it takes 20, 30 minutes to see whether the themes that I'm surfacing are themes that are already being circulated out there in the wider world, and what in my piece or what I have put together is unique. And sometimes what I now found I'm doing is I'm stripping out 2/3 of what I wrote and focusing on what it's identified as a unique piece that's not being replicated by other voices or other AIs out there. And then kind of using that as a lever to go even more, like you said, to be a bit more unhinged.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to follow the data and see if that's serving you.
Yeah.
Because my pushback on that would be, even if somebody else is talking about this other theme, your take on it is still the interesting thing that people need to hear about. Right? So it's like, there was a time where everybody was talking about, move fast and break things. I'm sure we're going to get back to that because we're breaking things in a not great way right now.
Indeed.
But everybody was talking about it, but everybody had a different perspective on it. So it is one of those things too, is if everyone's talking about it, is it actually going to get you back into the algorithm in a better way? Because it is something that is actually circulating, right? So it'll be very interesting to see if the data is a proof point on that. I mean, I know that I'm talking about intuition and intuitive intelligence and the use of AI. I'm not the only one talking about it, but I do feel like my opinion is unique in that
Mm-hmm.
sense too. And my knowledge of, 25 years of marketing and communications, and then also, leaning into that intuitive side of me is really aiding that point of view.
Yeah. Well, and so let's talk a little bit more about this idea of unique
Yeah.
and where a unique brand starts from, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there with leaders, probably less so with younger leaders, more so with older Gen X and whatnot, about what their brand even is and where they start with this. So, what does make up a unique brand from a personal perspective in your view?
The number one thing is a relatable story. So as we've gotten older, our resumes are all starting to look very similar, right? Like we've all been at either, like, especially I'm sure the people that are listening to this, we've all been at like the same kind of companies. We all kind of had a very similar trajectory. The human story that has then given you insight and, I think, wisdom to lead the way that you do, or to be a, start a new entrepreneur, like be an entrepreneur or start a new business or innovate in the way that you do. That's the thing that's interesting. So when I work with executives, so much of the time they're telling me their story and they're like, well, I want to talk about creativity, innovation, and, leadership. And I'm like, no one cares what you have to say about any of those things. Like, everyone else is talking about those things. Nothing is interesting.
Hmm.
But in the middle of your career, you had a parent who passed who you were caretaking for, you became sober, and you moved across the country. Okay, well, those are things that are actually interesting, that are giving such depth to your human story and life experience that has then made you the leader that you are today. And those are the type of people that then want to work for you, because it's like, you've also been a caretaker. Like, that leads to a lot of the personality of who I'm looking for in a mentor.
Hmm.
Or you're also sober. I'm also sober. This is leading to a space of safety where I can actually feel like I can learn and grow. So I think that those soft skills and those life skills and those personality traits are actually so important to who we are, and are going to be significantly more important as, I think, AI takes a larger role in our lives, especially in the corporate world.
The examples that you just gave there really cut, in my mind, directly to the idea of vulnerability. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, you
basically
have
what
to be
you just,
vulnerable.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you just said. So
Yeah.
that is very contrary to the world that I grew up in 30 years ago professionally. And I recognize there's been a sea change here. And,
Yeah.
I've got a foot in kind of both generational camps, as it were. But that is a really difficult thing to get past for a lot of people.
It is, but I also think it's a thing that's going to cut through. So, I mean, it is, especially when I'm working with people, they're like, well, I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, okay, well, we can always work with what you want to talk about, but it depends on what your end goal is, right? Like, I don't think everybody needs to be on a stage. I don't think everybody needs to be a thought leader. But I do think that when people have a unique opinion and a unique story, the right people are going to hear it when they need to. And then the ripple effect of that is going to be the impact that you leave on the world, right? One person hears me say, if I talk about my recovery journey, that is going to, help me in my corporate world, and starts talking about the recovery story. And then they get another person to get into recovery, job done, And I think that we think too big when we need to start thinking a little smaller.
I completely agree. I think the one thing that I wrestle with a lot when we're talking about this and making sure that we've got an authentic story out there that resonates with the right person at the right time is it just feels so crowded. Even LinkedIn, it just seems like a
Yes.
saturated platform. And it's like, what do I got to do to break through?
Yeah. I don't know if LinkedIn is for everyone. I don't think that everybody needs to be a content creator. I mean, I
Hmm.
say this all the time. It's like, I don't want to be making videos and making content all the time. Like, that isn't good for my soul, right? But I love to write. So if I can share some of that, that makes me happy. when it comes to LinkedIn, if creating isn't your thing, right? And that's not what you want to do. Engaging is the best possible thing for you. A comment here, a comment there. If that's not your jam, go to events. And I think your brand is going to come out naturally with the people that you're around. And I do think we just, even 6 years after the pandemic, we need more human connection. I mean, if you just look at the Knicks parade, it was like the energy and just like, and even the World Cup, it's just like people being out and just like the hospitable nature of people when we get the chance to I think bond around something that is exciting is really, really lovely and something that we need more of. And even if that's not your thing, if you're an introvert, I always just tell my clients, even if you want to be home all the time, totally fine. Try saying yes to one thing a month. Just one. And it can be a networking event. It could be a pottery class. It could be pickleball, whatever it is. Just get out, because I think that human connection, whether it is in work or outside of work, is still building your brand in a great way.
So let's talk a little bit about how you build your brand, but let's talk about it first from the perspective of what not to do, because I know you spend a lot of time with clients telling them what not to do and why that plan they got from ChatGPT or Claude is overly optimistic or unrealistic or just plain wrong. So let's talk about what that looks like. And we've kind of touched on this, but I want to go a little bit deeper in terms of how execs misuse AI for their brand.
The what not to do first is to be a thought leader on everything. Just because you're a thought leader does not mean we need your point of view on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think often that's our default. It's like, oh, well, this is what's going on in the world. I need to be commenting on this.
Mm-hmm.
When I help people build brands, I bucket them into professional, personal, passion. And I make the buckets pretty big. So you have some play, an area to work with. But once you nail down those, don't veer. They can evolve too, but they don't really change, right? It's kind of like your institutional knowledge and the things that you're excited about. The other thing when it comes to your personal brand is don't change it because someone doesn't like it. I think a lot of the time people will be like, well, I was talking about this and I got really bad feedback from 4 people. And I'm like, okay, well then your brand is not for those 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be everything to everyone. It's just not going to work. And then also, especially with executives, we don't need your political opinion on everything. Unless that is part of your value statement and mission statement within your company. And that is something that you're actually driven to do. Or it's a personal passion project of yours. But it makes things very, very hard, because once you comment on something, everybody wants your comments on everything.
Mm.
And your PR person's just going to be in a world of hurt. But when it comes to AI and AI's optimism, I mean, the amount of founders who have sent me PR plans that have been written on ChatGPT and that are like, this is such an amazing idea. You are going to launch this on the Today Show and it is going to be great. And I've actually reached out and been like, hi, where'd you get this plan? What, this is a very optimistic and aggressive plan. Wow. It was like, oh, well, I worked on AI with it. I'm like, but AI is telling you how amazing you are. And I have to tell you, as a strategic comms person who's been doing this for a very long time, this is not going to happen. And I think that that's probably why people pay me, so they can actually get a real response, but it's not always received great either.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think there's this false hope that AI is giving so many founders right now. And I think we just need to be more strategic.
I am interested. How do you reset those expectations when someone brings you this brilliant ChatGPT plan that tells them how great they are and they're going to be on the Today Show?
They either try to do it themselves, or they find somebody who is willing to take their money and to do it. And I think it's funny. I wrote a whole post about this because I actually think I'm too ethical as a PR person. I've been doing this for so long. I'm not going to take someone's money unless I know that I can be successful. And I know that I'm successful because I have years of experience of doing this. And a lot of the time it won't work. And I'll either not hear from this person again, or I'll hear from this person and say, like, I should have listened to you in the first place. Like, what actually do you recommend we do now? We just wasted this much money on this, and we actually have to get this out in the world. What's the plan? So, and I think that's a very humble thing to do, right? But if you're investing so much money in a new business, that you gotta, you want it to be successful. I think crisis comms is going to have the largest role it's ever played in branding and in kind of in the world next year. Because I think right now everybody is really leaning into, again, like AI strategy. And I think it is going to potentially backfire for a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
and are going to need crisis communication specialists to come in and kind of clean it up.
Say a little bit more about that, because I have some suspicions about what the next 18 months looks like from a cybersecurity perspective with
Yeah.
respect to AI. But I'm interested in your take on the crisis comms piece.
I get very concerned that people are getting strategic communications counsel, both internal comms of how to talk to your employees and how to talk to your stakeholders, and external comms of how to talk to your consumers. And it's not great advice. I think some of it is good, but I think some of it could lead to long-term crisis, which could be you've done a huge PR campaign to launch a product, and you actually there's no way you can make that amount of product in a certain amount of time, and you're going to have very angry customers. Or you ended up making product with a manufacturer that ChatGPT, told you was phenomenal, and the product is terrible. And then you also have angry customers. But it could be anything too, of your employees or even you as a CEO saying the wrong thing and then asking chat for guidance of what to do next, and it definitely steering you in the wrong direction. So there's crisis communication specialists are a very special breed who can come into a scenario with 10 different plans on how things are going to go and execute flawlessly. But you have to be able to pivot real time. So, I mean, I have dealt with a lot of crisis in my career with major brands, and you're like, okay, well, here's plan A. And then of course, you have lawyers and you have all the other people that are like, well, we definitely don't want to do it that way. Like, we can't be that honest. But here's plan A. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't work. Here's plan B. Okay. If it goes, it's like a choose your own adventure from when you were a kid, those books. So a good crisis comms team is going to have all of the scenarios of how this could land, and then know in real time which way to go. Yeah.
I appreciate you taking us through that, because one of the things that I see within organizations is what I'm going to call stretch or adjacent competencies. So
Mhm.
AI allows folks to extend beyond their core competencies. And sometimes that's a good thing, but there is a line at which you cross that it starts to become dangerous. Say when somebody from marketing is reviewing legal contracts, right, pertaining to procurement or whatever, and they feel like they can do that because of AI. And so what you've just surfaced kind of falls into that bucket in my mind, but just the stakes are perhaps even a little higher.
Well, and on the cybersecurity front, I think in kind of tandem with this, a lot of people are very concerned that their digital IP is being made on a company's AI platform,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to own that. So
Yeah.
there are companies, I mean, I've had people reach out to me and they're like, I can make a digital copy of you that then your clients can tune into if they don't have access to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gone back to all these people that says, who owns my digital IP? Who owns that? Like, I'm not, you, is that now on your platform? And then what happens when your platform either goes away, and like, where does this live? Where's that data live? So I know a lot of people right now who are not wanting to put their IP on their company's AI platforms and then using their own, which is a whole security risk in itself, right? It's like the one that you have at home. If you're throwing a RFP into, or you're throwing a creative idea into, uh, if it has new product or it has something it's, that is client sensitive on there, is that going out into the world? I mean, I have so many questions about how this is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure,
Well,
you do too. It's like, what's next?
It's still early days.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of folks lose sight of, which I don't think you have, because while you didn't specifically articulate this, it's kind of embedded in your comments, is that as the technology and the capabilities continue to improve at an exponential rate, the volume of information that we've provided is very fertile ground for digital twins and a lot of more sophisticated capabilities than what we can even envision today. So your question about who owns this, where does it live, where does it go, what happens to it, I think that's all extremely relevant. And a lot of people just want to wave that away right now. But it is not something that should be waved away.
Yeah, and on the agentic front, which I'm very novice still. So I just want to say, like, I'm very much, I mean, obviously, I think we all are, to be fair, like, we're all learning what that looks like. Um, my biggest concern is that our algorithms are so curated anyway.
Hmm.
So when it comes to PR, back, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you used to be able to get a story and then you would get the audience of that media landscape, not just the people that are reading your story. So even now, if you're on the Today Show or you're in the New York Times, the people who are reading your story are still only the people who are interested in your idea, right? They're only interested in that topic. So it's not like you're getting the reach that you used to either. So I'm like, so if I like this one pizza place, is it never going to show me Thai food? Do you know what I mean? Like, how am
Yeah.
I going to be able to experience new things
Hmm.
unless I go out of my way to do that? I don't want it to just be constantly serving me what it knows I like.
Hmm.
So I don't know what that's all going to look like either.
Yeah. It, I think it's really, one thing is very clear to me. We are 1 foot over the line into a very different era that we don't understand yet. And I know that's a very broad, nebulous statement, yet I don't think there's a high level of appreciation about how different the age that we have entered is going to be in many respects from the age that we just left.
Yes. And I think about that in terms of electricity,
Hmm.
in terms of the internet. Somebody was saying the other day, they're like, I'm just really concerned about what the jobs look like. I'm like, the wild thing is, I mean, I graduated college in 2001 and there were absolutely no jobs to be had. I mean, it was just like a desert. And I was in Northern California as well. So it was just like, it was a real interesting situation. Um, but the amount of new jobs that were created from that, I mean, we didn't have content creators, we didn't have IT, we didn't, like all of that stuff has created an entire new economy. So in many ways, I'm actually excited to see like what the careers of tomorrow are going to look like. Right. And also like the skills that you're going to need for those careers. Like the hill I will die on and I will continue to just, beat this drum is that everyone will need intuitive intelligence. Everyone will need emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
And then everyone will need critical thinking.
Yes.
And if you do not have those three skills, and we're going to have to start teaching those skills in a major way, um, that's what's going to make you successful.
I couldn't agree more. And the erosion of critical thinking skills, in my view, and I'll probably take some flack from the higher ed and business community for this, but in my view, that erosion began 25, 30 years ago when we decided that we were just going to start training people to do jobs. You're going to go to college or
100%.
whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
And
I
so
couldn't agree more.
we've lost the ability to think, many of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we get that back in a timely manner because you're absolutely right. EQ, judgment, discernment, the ability to work with other people. I think that AI has the ability to make us more human if we lean into certain aspects. But there are some very real hurdles to getting through this current transition point.
Yes. And what critical thinking is going to look like and the need for that in the future, I think is going to be different than it's been in the past as well. But I'm also just seeing the, alpha generation and how we need to really double down on life skills as well
Mm, yeah.
of just, or like street skills, right? A
Mm,
lot of their book smarts are going to be not necessary. I hate to say that, but not necessary for the world that we're going to be living in. But their street smarts are going to be unbelievably important. And we're going to have to help nurture an entire resilient generation that you're right has, I think, discernment in a way that we've never actually like really we in a new way that we really really need.
mhm.
I'm excited about that, and I think that there's people like us that are going to need to help mentor that generation as well.
I agree because the days of going for your undergrad, your higher ed, your grad school education, and having to memorize voluminous amounts of information in order to apply it. That particular skill set, I don't think is relevant anymore. But the question in my mind is, what level of training and memorization is important to be able to get to that critical thinking path? And I see that a lot with organizations right now as
Yeah.
well. When they're hiring, they are automating an awful lot of very routine work. And candidly, that work's very boring, yet it served a purpose for a lot of entry level folks. So, how do we replicate that experience in a meaningful way and accelerate their ability to get to a point where they can apply judgment in a meaningful way? I don't have a good answer for that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. I know I don't either,
yeah,
but I am actually excited to see where that goes.
same.
Yeah.
So, what do you think keeps a before we leave the issue of judgment here? What do
Yeah.
you think keeps a leader's judgment sharp? What have you seen folks doing to stay grounded, to continue to not surrender their cognitive abilities to some of these tools?
I mean, the first thing is, as a leader, if you're expecting your employees to be using AI, you better be using AI too. Like there needs to be the KPIs that are put in for your staff, you also need to be held accountable for. Um, when it comes to keeping those skills sharp, I mean, I still think it's like in person, I reaction, like interaction. I think it's having those tough conversations. I've noticed and I've seen a lot more companies actually having to bring in the kind of like interpersonal skills that an entire generation really didn't, especially the ones that are joining work right now. So the ones that were like at the end of high school or early college when the pandemic hit, but are needing those kind of um, interactive interpersonal skills at work. So it's wild that that has to be taught into an entry level job, but I also think that we need it because they're going to be the managers of not only the people, but the managers of the agents.
Hmm.
And we are not going to have an option anymore. So everyone is going to be a manager. And that is something that you are not taught until you actually manage people. Like you don't go to management school. I mean, you can, but it's not that
Right.
it's not actually relevant. Like it doesn't work until you actually have to do it in real life. Right. So I'm really curious on that, how that's going to work out. And there's nothing more I love than helping teach those kind of workshops because they're also fun, like getting to like figure out how to use your intuition and figuring out like what real writing skills look like when it comes to interpersonal communication.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you just framed things in a way I hadn't quite thought about before, but it harkens back to something I work with executives on for the last 15 years, which is the difference between management and leadership. And
Yeah.
as these systems become more sophisticated, I think it's going to be very easy to fool ourselves into thinking that we just need to either manage or lead, right? Irrespective of whether it's an AI system or a human being. Yet I think there's going to be distinct differences there, and folks need to be able to put on the management hat when they're working with an AI agent versus the leadership hat when they're working with their human counterparts.
100%. And I think that the leadership, we still need to, there's a very gray line, I think, between obviously leading in a way that has empathy and has compassion, but also leading in a way where you still where you have a P&L and that's the bottom line, right? Like
Hmm.
I've never been that person that's like this company is a family.
Yeah.
I don't fire my family.
Yeah.
I don't pay my family. So and that I'm sure other people do. I don't. Um,
Oh.
but there's I think we need to think about what that looks like. And obviously there's a huge difference between, running a startup and running a public company. So, but yeah, leadership and management are two very, very different things. And I think are going to kind of weave in and out in the next generation.
Well said. Let's return for a second to digital footprints and personal brand, but let's go negative. Uh, there's a downside to having a digital footprint that makes you easy to find, and I'd like your perspective on what execs really need to understand about the risk side of building a public brand right now.
So I mean, this is such a tricky topic
Oh yeah,
because
I'm not asking you an easy question here.
No. But I mean, for so many reasons, because it also is going to change. It's changing literally between like the first conversation we had a few months ago to like where it is now to where it's going to be in 6 months is just wild. The first thing I think about all the time when I am either posting or I am on a podcast is how easy it is for somebody to not only replicate my ideas, but also replicate my voice. And for the generation that is Gen X and like, I think mid millennials to elder millennials, we're living in a time where our parents are living much longer and they are more easily deceived when it comes to the internet, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, every conversation, it's like, how do you get your parents off the phone? This is just like wild. But I have also had parents who have gotten that phone call with somebody who sounds like one of us, which is terrifying. So the deep fake in that is going to be much more prevalent as more and more people have their voices online, have podcasts, have YouTube, have, thought leadership, wherever that is. So that's the number one thing that I always say, like, you always have to keep that in mind. The other thing is names are not unique. And I hate to say that in like the worst way possible, but there's a bunch of people with my name. So even as I am thinking about the brand that I'm building, somebody else is building a brand that is always kind of intertwining with mine. There's another publicist who has my name. There is someone in the government she's a badass. She's amazing. She makes me look great, but who also has my name. So
maybe we need to get her on here. Would you look at the time? I've got to get going.
It's so interesting to me because I never thought about the fact that like those brands would really like interweave in a weird way.
Yeah.
So as I'm building my brands, and I do it fairly intentionally, I say this as a PR person, but I'm like so authentic that it kind of like, it is, what you get with me. Blessing and a curse. That it is when LLMs are crawling all of the things that I'm doing, I'm always like, how am I not showing up? You know what I mean? Or why am I showing up this way? So that's something to think about. And then the other thing is like, and I've said this for obviously decades as a PR person, like once it's on the internet, you cannot take it back. Somebody screen grabbed it, somebody saw it. Like the best advice I can give when you are in some kind of situation like that is to like move very quickly. Because the slower you are to a kind of crisis with your own personal brand, you're giving people the time to create the narrative that they want out in the world, which is always wild to me.
Yeah. So two follow-up questions to that. And I'm not sure what the right vernacular would be here, but I'm thinking like digital hygiene baseline, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there a minimal, or whatever phrase works here for my first question, is there a minimal digital hygiene baseline that people should be thinking about as leaders when they are trying to guard against some of this type of more nefarious stuff? Not that you can ever prevent it, but again, I think you understand where I'm coming from.
I do. I mean, I think it's hard because you want to know what's going on with your own brand, right? So having like a Google alert that tells you when something's happening is actually like number one. The second thing is like grab everything that has your name, like your website, the socials, just so that nobody else can actually create something underneath your name. Now, this all takes like a lot of work too. I mean, to be honest, the best executives who I think have great brands but are not like wild are the ones who have no social media, and the ones who like they have a LinkedIn, right? But they're not posting anything. The ones who are doing talks and are doing things very intentionally. They tend to be older because they don't need that push like that others do. And I also think the things that are private, keep private. And if something is no longer serving you or you no longer align with the values, delete it. Like I got rid of Twitter when it became X. I was like, this no longer aligns with, I don't enjoy this space anymore. So I got rid of it. So we just don't need to be everywhere. It just, and I think a publicist is going to say to you, you need to be everywhere for reach. And just as like, I think you can be somewhere, not everywhere. And I also think we always need to think about like what the long tail of all of that is, of having to maintain all of that stuff too, is a huge full-time job and commitment and
Yes.
cost.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's that too. Yeah.
Okay. And then my second follow-up, that was great, and I think there was a lot of really good, advice in that. And this doesn't need to be a long answer, but you talked about moving fast, when you have a compromised position with your personal brand. What does that look like, in terms of moving fast, and how do you move fast in a situation like that? Is that get out there and delete everything as soon as possible? Is that get
I
your
mean,
own narrative out there? Yeah,
it's already there.
I know.
It's like, um, yeah. I mean, again, this is why I tell everybody to have a crisis comms person or at least a
Mhm.
publicist that you know on speed dial, like even a friend, just like help me. It's always fascinating when you get those phone calls. Um, when I say move fast, I think obviously like you're not going to do something immediately. Like, take a sec to actually like take in this scenario. Is it something that actually garners the attention that is needed, or is something that can be ignored? Right? To everybody, just remember like stuff. The media and news moves so fast. 10 years ago, when something happened, you would be in the news the whole week.
Mhm.
Now you're in the news for 24 hours.
Yeah, if
V-
that.
If that. The problem, though, is that LLMs are always going to remind everybody
Yeah.
that you were in the news for 24 hours,
Mhm.
right? So I also see a future where we are going to be, and it's been happening for a while, but where we're going to be quite manipulative of what we can scrape from the internet, but that comes at a cost. I think owning mistakes, if that is what your crisis includes, is the most human thing that you can do.
So you just surfaced something that I hadn't thought about before. You talked about the news cycle, right? You gave the example of 10 years ago you were in it for a week, now you're in it for if the 24 hours at most. Yet, yet the the way the game is starting to be played is that people aren't going to news articles anymore. They are looking for that AI served up distilled information. So are there ways to, I don't want to say game the system, but are there ways to influence that AI driven narrative as opposed to um, some other type of crisis comms here? Do you understand what I'm
I
asking?
totally, yes. The
Yeah.
problem with that, though, where we are today,
Yeah.
is that that takes time. So
Mm,
even if you put a blog on your website, or you are in a trade publication, or you are like flooding the social airways with like all of your friends posting, the LLMs are not going to crawl that for weeks, if not like 2 months.
yeah.
So like everything has a much longer tail than we think it does at the moment. I do think that's going to change with just the speed of how things are happening. But right now, no, that's going to show up months later. And I don't know what the solve is
Yeah.
yet for that.
Well, and that's a fascinating contradiction that you just highlighted there in terms of the speed of the news cycle and the speed and the pace of change, coupled or contrasted, I guess, against the lag of the agentic systems ingesting that content and then repurposing it.
Yeah. And again, I think, I don't know, but I think the solve on that is going to be, how do we delete as much of it as possible
Hmm.
so it's not crawled?
Yeah.
But that's going to be very expensive. And you can't delete social media stuff that other people have put out there. And then when you add bots into the mix, I mean, this is an unbelievably complicated and terrible dynamic, like, and complex problem that I don't have a solution for. I'm sure there's going to be companies that are like, I can solve that. Like,
Yeah. Right.
they're going to make a lot of money.
No doubt.
Yep.
No doubt. Well, and it reminds me of a conversation that I'm hearing more and more frequently, which is the internet even built for humans anymore?
I have to say, we're sharing it in the best way possible.
We are
Well, because,
cohabitants.
you know, I think that, and I've been reading a lot about this lately, of the role that AI is going to play, especially in healthcare.
Mm,
There
mhm.
have been a lot of articles that have been written about this. There's a lot of social that's happening about this. There's even national morning shows that are talking about this. that in America, healthcare we have such a lag in when we actually need to see doctors and when we need to get things done. And then the cost is so high, even with insurance, that people are going to AI for answers. And people are going to AI for medical or for, mental health help. And people are going to AI for a lot of, I think, personal usage in that way. And I do believe that that AI is probably going to help us solve cancer, right?
Hmm.
Is going to, I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of um, medical, there's a lot of amazing medical advances that we are going to make with this. And I also think that it gives us a little bit of solace when we can't find and we can't get into the healthcare providers that we need. So that's where I think that humans are always going to be kind of like checking back in to solve these daily problems that we have gotten into like a complete, that we've hit a wall with. I mean, I've done that myself. Now, I wouldn't recommend everybody like upload all of your medical um, charts and labs and everything into AI. But if you have specific questions, I mean, all of these articles are saying like it's a great starting point to figure out what you need next. That's amazing if you think about it.
It absolutely is, and I think that is a really good example of the true power that you can unleash with these tools in terms of large data analysis, pattern mining, context analysis, and medical applications. I think are absolutely one of those slam dunk areas. But again, you don't want to necessarily want to go to Dr. ChatGPT,
No,
right? Yeah.
no,
So
no, no. But I do think that it can help point you in the right direction, right? I was looking for a specific specialist that I needed that is very rare, and it crawled the internet and gave me pretty much every specialist within the United States. Like that would have
wonderful.
taken me
Yeah.
hours
Yep.
to research myself.
Yeah. Great
So
example.
yeah. Mhm.
You touched on the issue a few moments ago in one of our conversations here about some of the older leaders, and you didn't use the word older, but maybe you said more seasoned. I don't remember. Leaders that have had a lot of success building their brand. And I'm wondering if we're thinking about more seasoned leaders, do the ones that built the footprint before agentic AI started taking hold, do they have an edge that the next cohort won't?
No, no, I actually think they are at a deficit.
Mm,
Um, because they're not necessarily the ones that want to be vulnerable. And I
mm.
think that authenticity and vulnerability and transparency is actually what is now driving a personal brand. So the old playbook is just not going to work anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be in their jobs and they're not going to be getting, multi-million dollar, paychecks and bonuses because they run companies very, very well. But I can tell you right now, there are junior staff within their companies that have much more established, much more credible, and much more, I think, inspirational personal brands than their leaders do.
Hmm. What do you think the value of a personal brand like that is for a junior leader? Because it's not like AI is going to hire that junior leader for the next position, right? They still have to
Right.
show up. They still have to demonstrate competency to the people they're interviewing with. What is the value of that brand?
I mean, you have that. If you're coming, this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but if you're coming to a company with 200,000 followers on your TikTok and you've been talking about purses, I'm just going to give an example. If you're moving into a marketing company that is focused on consumer products, you already have added value to that company
Mm,
because you understand that social media game. You
hmm.
understand your audience that you're talking to. You understand, I think, cultural behavioral and strategy and how that
Hmm.
works. And you also have a bunch of followers that your company can then be mentioned on to them.
Yeah.
So I actually guest lecture at USC, and the first question I teach a class on personal branding, and that's one of the first questions I ask is who in here is a content creator and how many followers do you have, and how do you use that to your advantage?
Mm-hmm.
But a side hustle like that too, even if you're somebody who bakes on the weekends,
Yeah.
right, and is selling things out of your home, that you're an entrepreneur. And if you're talking about that and that's part of your personal brand, I want to hire you because you know how to start a side hustle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm quiet here for a second because I'm thinking about what we talked about earlier in terms of brand equity, and I'm thinking about your comments just now. And I've run across a couple executives. Let me frame this up here. I'm kind of talking over myself because you've got me thinking here. I've run across a couple executives that have actually inserted into their employment contracts prior to hire that they can't have a digital twin of themselves created. Right? We kind of
Mhm.
touched on that subject earlier.
By the way, brilliant. I think everybody should be doing this, no matter
Well,
no matter what level you are.
okay, so then I
Yeah.
think you're going to like this next question. So, as in your example here, let's stick with that 200,000 company followers. You hire me. I'm going to bring my brand equity to the company now, even though maybe I'm not in marketing per se, but I've got followers. I've got that. Are you seeing any indicators out there that people are negotiating terms in their contracts, or should they be thinking about this, where the brand equity that they bring comes with them and leaves with them? And maybe prior posts or things get deleted when they leave. Like, where is the line here between what a company has the ability to create value from based on what the individual is bringing versus the long term effects of that when that individual transitions to another organization?
That's a great question. I actually have not thought about that at all, and that's something that I do think that a younger generation needs to think about
Yeah.
because you are bringing. I have always, and the way that I've done it is probably not the way that it should be done. So I just want to make that like really clear because I haven't been embedded in a brand in 6 years. So, but even then, it was much more kind of like added value, and there was no expectation. Like it's not like the company got to approve anything that they posted, right? It was still like that is their side hustle, and that's their thing, and we love them for that because we get that kind of the peripheral bonus of that knowledge and of that potentially of that reach, right? But I do think that if this is something that is expected, I don't know what that's going to look like moving forward. If that is something expected, that is something that should be contractually discussed.
Hmm.
But kind of what you were saying too, and I love that people are already thinking about this. There was an amazing Wall Street Journal story about this kind of digital identity and your own IP and a digital twin. Um, Ensuring that whatever digital I think identity that is created for you at that company is taken with you. But I also think we need to be thinking about our digital IP living in our estate plans as well. Because when this digital identity is created of you, right? We're all going to have one at some point. And it's wild because potentially it is something that after you've passed, your family will be able to talk to. I mean, like it's the future of this is fascinating to me,
Hmm.
but it is something that your family should own.
Hmm.
Like, and if you don't put it there, who owns it? Where is it? Is that just living in purgatory for like just everybody to enjoy? Like, these are the things that I don't think that we're thinking about at all as we are handing over all of our data to companies that have not told us how they're going to use it. Wild.
Yeah, it is
Like
wild.
absolutely crazy.
Well, and
Yeah.
so you're unlocking some thoughts here for me, and I can't remember the deceased actor whose estate just put them in a movie. Their digital visage and image. Do you know what I'm talking about? There was,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, this is going to
Regardless if
drive
we
me
can
crazy.
remember it or
Yes.
not, yeah, it's a thing. And so what I'm wondering here is, to your point, maybe we need to be looking to the entertainment industry and some of the outliers there for guidance about what comes next. But then my follow up question is that actor's estate made the decision to put them in there. So who owns our digital twins after our death? And yeah, it's one thing to say put it in your estate plan. It's another to say, is there a DNR equivalent, right, for your digital twin?
A gazillion percent. And these are things that we're just not, as a society, talking about
Right.
enough. And it's wild because I'm sure there's people listening that are like, well, I'm just never going to have a digital twin made of me, right? I just
Yeah.
don't want that.
Guess
Okay.
what? It's out there.
Well, that, but even when I was talking to these companies, they're like, we will take all of your Slack messages. We'll take every podcast you've ever been on. We'll take any town hall you've ever been on. We'll take all of your emails. We'll take, voice messages off your phone. Whatever. We'll take anything that we have access to and make it. And some of the things are in public purview, right? What? I mean, like, these are the things when people are like, what keeps you up at night? I'm like, this keeps me up at night all the time. Like, it is so fascinating to me of what this looks like. And I also fear of all of the parents who have unknowingly put their children on social media since they were born, right? I mean, some of them obviously have used them as content creators and that kind of stuff, but just like, the pictures on Facebook and the videos on Instagram. And I mean, all of those settings and our user agreements are changing of who owns that IP as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What?
Because none of these companies are forever. And so then what happens to those digital assets when, Meta gets absorbed by DeepSeek or whatever, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Very important questions. So
that we don't have answers to.
No, we don't. So, all right. So back in terms of, as we kind of draw our conversation here to a close in the next couple minutes, what is something that you are constantly getting pinged by clients and potential customers about or with right now that maybe we haven't covered? Are there any themes that you're seeing out there? Are there any requests that are coming your way with respect to some of the stuff we've been discussing?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The first one is, how do I sound like the best version or the most authentic version of me in talks, in town halls, in emails, on LinkedIn? That is, I think, that's at the forefront, because I think, again, we've leaned too much into letting chat and Claude writing our emails and our bots and process that. So it's kind of like, okay, everyone is now anti-sounding AI. How do I not sound AI? Which is fascinating to me, right? The other thing is a lot of questions I get about intuitive intelligence. What does that mean? How do I teach my employees about it? How do I foster that? How do I create an environment of creativity and kind of like bigger thinking when I'm also requiring my staff to use AI on a regular basis? So that to me is a fun one, because it's something I love to teach. And I teach it with tools that are just like I actually use tarot cards and pendulums and energy work to get everyone out of their head and really start remembering what it was like to use that innate intuition that we're born with. I mean, we are born with fight or flight, right? Like our bodies create a visceral reaction to something if it is not the right thing. And we are, with AI, are taught to ignore that. We are taught to trust something that isn't innately that. So how do we get back to trusting that and not trusting something that's telling us we're right? I love it. I'm so excited about this. Like, that is the thing that I am most excited about in the future.
And you just, as this conversation has unfolded, you continue to say things that spur thoughts for me here. And one of the things that just fired off for me during your comments was the line between perfunctory communications and workflows where I don't care if AI deals with that, versus creative or unique responses that do require my voice. Because I do see a lot of executives running wholesale into the idea that AI can help me answer these emails and route this thing to this department. And I think that is entirely acceptable, candidly, because I don't need to have a poem by Keats when I'm dealing with, who's going to answer this customer service complaint. But if it's a request from a journalist for an interview, or if it's a key client, I do think that requires a little bit more thought. So I wonder about that line.
I think that layoffs are the best example for that. And let me tell you why.
I love it.
I actually wrote an op-ed in Ad Age last November when Omnicom, now obviously a huge holding company, was letting go of thousands of people. It was all done with very little empathy and very little compassion. And these are people who have been there for decades, right? And I understand with a merger, there's obviously going to be operational structure change, right? But the thing that was lost in the comms around that was that nobody read the room. The comms was written very much for a shareholder and not for the person. And what happened from that was a huge outcry of kind of, to be honest, like disgust and just like disappointment on Reddit, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I mean, it was every social media thing that you could think about was written like, I can't believe this is how this was handled. And for very little time, and I think, and obviously money, there could have been ways that even the communication around it was done in a much more human way.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think so much of the time that we lean into what is compliant and legally what is best versus like actually how do we treat each other like humans in a way that makes the most sense. So it's just this idea of like, again, you can't do something without reading a room. And so many of the times we kind of push that aside for something that feels operational. And I think it's a thing that just kind of like disappoints me most about what's going on in the world right now. And especially when you're on LinkedIn, is you're like, I've worked here for 12 years and I just got an email that was told that I'm no longer, useful in this company.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It does. So let's put the human back into the workforce and into the communications. And I think that's probably a real good place for us to end our conversation today, Elizabeth. And speaking of humans, if someone wants to reach out and learn that you are a real human and contact you as a human, how would they go about doing that?
You can reach me at thegoodadvicecompany.com and on LinkedIn. My name is Elizabeth Rosenberg.
Wonderful. Elizabeth Rosenberg, thank you very much. I enjoyed our time together here today.
Me too. Thank you.
And for our listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode of AI for the C-Suite. If this episode was useful, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on LinkedIn, even though it's saturated, and check out AIfortheCsuite.com. And until next time, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check. Take care, everybody.